broken as hell. I knew that I was carrying a lot of stuff. I wanted a relationship, but there's no way I was gonna have it with all that baggage. So I needed to sit back and focus on me.
Strictly for the purposes of financial gain for those who have access to her estate, including Clive Davis.
Including Clive Davis.
The atmosphere in the courtroom was suffocating, as if the walls themselves were straining to hold back the weight of what was being revealed. Fantasia Barrino, once celebrated as the embodiment of triumph over adversity, now sat under the harsh glare of public scrutiny, peeling back the layers of her darkest experiences. Her testimony wasn't just a personal account of betrayal. It was a bombshell indictment of the music industry's most powerful players, Clive Davis and Sean Diddy. Combs, she alleged, had built their empires on a foundation of exploitation, fear, and silence.
I felt like the world was always all in I just wanted to do it my way. So he was like, well, it's good, let's go. And we got in the car and we went.
Fantasia's revelations painted a portrait of systemic abuse that reached far beyond her own career, suggesting a deeply entrenched culture within the music industry designed to control and exploit vulnerable artists. The details were harrowing. At the peak of her fame, after her American Idol victory in 2004, she was thrust into a world that promised stardom but delivered something entirely different. She was coerced into signing contracts that stripped her of financial autonomy, leaving her saddled with debt despite her chart-topping success. Her near-fatal 2010 overdose, widely reported at the time as an accident fueled by personal struggles, was, she now claimed, the direct result of relentless psychological manipulation by those who profited from her pain.
Centerpiece of a lot of what happened during direct testimony were freak-offs. And what the prosecution tried to show was that he forced and or coerced her into doing these freak-offs. And we've talked about this earlier this week, that at least my opinion is that in a lot of these, the prosecution just didn't close the loop. It was something she felt.
Court documents revealed that Fantasia had been trapped in contracts that funneled the majority of her earnings to executives and corporate entities tied to Clive Davis's Arista Records. Financial records showed that despite generating millions, she was left with less than 5% of her revenue after deductions for management fees, recoupable advances, and other nebulous charges, a financial structure disturbingly common in the industry. Her testimony linked Davis directly to this exploitation, portraying him as the architect of a system that preyed on young, uneducated talent. Insiders had long whispered about Davis's iron grip on his artists, but Fantasia's statements added new layers to the narrative, suggesting that his influence extended into personal lives, ensuring that anyone who dared resist would face consequences ranging from blacklisting to public humiliation. Equally chilling were the allegations against Diddy, who Fantasia described as Davis's trusted enforcer, a man tasked with maintaining control over artists who dared to rebel. According to Fantasia, Diddy's role wasn't just as a producer or mentor, but as a figure of intimidation. Leaked emails and insider accounts corroborated her claims, painting Diddy as someone who used psychological manipulation and threats to keep artists in line. Fantasia recounted one instance where a former colleague attempted to walk away from their contract, only to be met with veiled threats that their career and potentially their personal safety would be destroyed. "You'll never work again," was reportedly the chilling mantra repeated by those under Diddy's influence. The courtroom was riveted as Fantasia's legal team introduced evidence linking Diddy to a series of incidents involving other artists, including allegations of financial coercion, verbal abuse, and even physical intimidation. A 2023 lawsuit filed by former Bad Boy Records employee Rodney Lil Rod Jones alleged that Diddy had a history of using fear as a tool to maintain control over his inner circle. Jones's lawsuit, which accused Diddy of physical assault, included claims that mirrored Fantasia's own experiences. And then there was Cassie Ventura's explosive civil suit, settled late last year, which alleged years of emotional manipulation, enforced substance abuse, all of which painted a damning picture of Diddy's tactics.
Dishonest, violent, horrible. A promiscuous swinger who lied to and cheated on multiple partners. Incredibly, that's how Sean Diddy Combs' own lawyers described the billionaire music mogul, currently facing serious trafficking charges in a New York court.
Fantasia's testimony also introduced a new and deeply unsettling theory about the relationship between Diddy and Clive Davis. In recent months, Suge Knight's Prison podcast had stirred controversy by suggesting that the two moguls shared more than just a professional alliance. Knight's claims that Davis and Diddy were not only close collaborators but also deeply enmeshed in a covert system of control and exploitation added fuel to the fire of conspiracy theories swirling around the industry. Knight hinted that Davis's mentorship of Diddy extended into orchestrating power plays that went far beyond music, touching on allegations of blackmail, coercion, and the systematic silencing of dissenting voices. The most shocking aspect of Fantasia's account wasn't just the allegations themselves. It was the systemic nature of the abuse. Her story wasn't unique. It was emblematic of an industry built on a hierarchy, where the powerful preyed on the powerless. Fantasia's legal team brought up parallels with other artists who had suffered under similar circumstances. Cassie's case was just one example. The late Whitney Houston, another artist under Davis's wing, had also faced financial struggles and personal turmoil despite her immense success. Fantasia's lawyers pointed to eerie parallels between Houston's tragic downfall and the patterns of control Fantasia described, suggesting that her story was part of a broader, more sinister narrative.
Going through some things of adversity and getting through it was the...
Even Fantasia's financial ruin seemed deliberate. Documents presented in court revealed that her debts had been compounded by exploitative contracts, including one where she was forced to sign over her publishing rights for a fraction of their value. One particularly damning piece of evidence was a 2008 email exchange in which a high-ranking executive at Arista Records discussed strategies for managing Fantasia's growing dissatisfaction with her contract. The email mentioned leveraging her financial struggles as a means of ensuring compliance, a revelation that left the courtroom audibly gasping. And yet, the most heart-wrenching moment of Fantasia's testimony came when she described the toll this all took on her mental health. "They didn't just take my money," she said, her voice trembling. "They took my peace, my dignity, and almost my life." Her 2010 overdose, widely dismissed at the time as the result of personal failings, was, she now revealed, a desperate cry for help in a world that had systematically broken her down. Hospital records from that time, introduced as evidence, showed that she had been treated not just for physical symptoms but for severe psychological distress, a fact that had been carefully omitted from public statements by her management team.
He was that. When I met him, I was like, yo, scary. We didn't make love till we married. That was one thing I wanted. I wanted somebody to see me for me, not Fantasia.
Fantasia's testimony wasn't just a personal account, it was a seismic event, shaking the foundations of an industry that had long operated in the shadows. The allegations against Clive Davis and Sean Diddy Combs were no longer whispers confined to back rooms. They were now front-page news, backed by evidence and delivered with an urgency that demanded action. The courtroom, and indeed the world, was left grappling with the implications of her story. This wasn't just about Fantasia, it was about an entire system that thrived on silence and complicity, and for the first time in decades that silence was being shattered. But Fantasia's testimony was just the tip of the iceberg. As her shocking allegations reverberated through the courtroom and beyond, another name emerged from the shadows, one that has haunted the music industry for decades: Cassie Ventura. Her story, long shrouded in whispers and carefully orchestrated silences, exploded into public view late last year, with a lawsuit that sent shockwaves through the very foundations of Sean Diddy Combs' empire. Cassie's claims, now central to federal investigations, painted a picture of a man who had allegedly weaponized power, wealth, and influence to create a chilling environment of control and fear. A story that intertwined disturbingly with Fantasia's own narrative.
Let's talk about the filth that's starting to come out in the early days of the Diddy trial. This, of course, is P. Diddy. Surprise, surprise, he's a creep. Surprise, surprise, he's done horrible things.
Cassie, once the fresh-faced star of Diddy's Bad Boy Records, seemed to have it all: fame, beauty, and access to the glittering world of celebrity. But behind the scenes, her life was anything but glamorous. The lawsuit she filed in November 2023 revealed a harrowing tale of manipulation and coercion spanning over a decade. Cassie accused Diddy of subjecting her to relentless psychological torment, physical harm, and what she described as perverse power plays designed to break her spirit. The lawsuit, which was settled within just 24 hours for an undisclosed but staggering sum, was more than just a legal battle. It was a reckoning.
They saw evidence in the case. They immediately honed in on racketeering and they started saying, why is this racketeering with one guy? And they're charging this one guy. They had a real problem with that. They did not have a problem with the Mann Act. They found him guilty on the Mann Act. And they hung 6 to 6 on racketeering.
The details were as horrifying as they were specific. Cassie alleged that Diddy had forced her into compromising situations, orchestrating encounters that left her emotionally shattered. While the settlement effectively silenced further courtroom proceedings, the ripple effects were immediate and far-reaching. Other victims began coming forward, emboldened by Cassie's bravery. Federal investigators, already circling Diddy's empire, seized the opportunity to dig deeper, culminating in dramatic raids on his sprawling homes in Miami and Los Angeles earlier this year. These raids, described by witnesses as something out of a movie, uncovered troves of evidence, documents, recordings, and testimonies that prosecutors claim paint an undeniable picture of systemic abuse.
Referred to me as Wild King Nights. And what a Wild King Night was when him and a guest would go to a hotel room or be at his home, his bedroom, and they would have intimate gatherings. I would have to go and prep that hotel room. which consisted of baby oil Astroglide.
And yet, the allegations against Diddy didn't stop at emotional and physical exploitation. There were whispers, loud ones, about his alleged role in darker, more sinister activities. Cassie herself hinted at Diddy's penchant for keeping blackmail material on those in his orbit, a claim that investigators are reportedly now pursuing. This alleged practice designed to ensure loyalty and silence raises uncomfortable questions about how many other careers and lives he may have controlled from the shadows. Could it be that the man who once dominated the music charts with his infectious energy and charm was, behind closed doors, orchestrating a web of manipulation unlike anything the industry had ever seen? But Diddy isn't the only figure under the microscope. The late Whitney Houston's name has also resurfaced in connection to these claims, adding an almost ghostly weight to the unfolding drama. For years, speculation has swirled around the tragic circumstances of Whitney's untimely passing and the eerily similar fate of her daughter Bobby Christina. Both were found unconscious in bathtubs under circumstances that remain shrouded in mystery. And both, it's worth noting, were deeply connected to Clive Davis. Whitney, of course, was Davis's crown jewel, an artist he often called the voice of a generation. But what price did she pay for that title?
And her and Clive had a fight 2 days before. And from what I was told, Bobby Christina was present for some of it.
The eerie parallels between Whitney and Bobby Christina's fates have long fueled whispers of something far more sinister at play. Some have pointed to Jaguar Wright's claims that Clive Davis had an unsettling amount of control over every aspect of Whitney's life, from her career to her personal relationships. Wright alleged that Davis isolated Whitney, surrounding her with people who served his interests rather than hers. This so-called inner circle reportedly acted as gatekeepers, ensuring that Whitney remained dependent on Davis and his team. Could it be that Whitney's downfall was orchestrated not by fate, but by a system designed to exploit her until she had nothing left to give? These theories remain unproven, but the sheer volume of speculation cannot be ignored.
Unfortunately, we're all going to take a disgusting trip to his seedy, awful world. You know, the man has no class. He has no kindness in his dark, dark heart. And he's depraved. That's my opinion. This is a depraved, disgusting individual about whom I wish to hear nothing after this trial is done.
Adding more weight to these suspicions is the timeline of events leading up to Whitney's final days. Just hours before her passing at the Beverly Hilton, she was seen at a pre-Grammy party hosted by none other than Clive Davis. Insiders have described the event as surreal. Whitney, disheveled and visibly unwell, was reportedly ignored by those who had once celebrated her brilliance. Some attendees have come forward anonymously, claiming that Whitney appeared to be crying out for help, but was met with cold indifference. The question lingers. Was this a tragic coincidence, or was she deliberately left to spiral, her struggles dismissed as inconvenient distractions?
They've been afraid of coming forward. They've been afraid of what he could potentially do to them within the industry, what he could do to them professionally, maybe even personally. And so yes, it's been a dark secret they've held on to for a very, very long time.
Further complicating the narrative is the resurfacing of Suge Knight's bombshell claims about Davis and Diddy. Knight, from his prison podcast, made the incendiary allegation that Davis and Diddy's partnership wasn't purely professional but deeply personal, one built on shared secrets and mutual leverage. While some may dismiss Knight as a provocateur, his comments have added fuel to the fire, especially when viewed alongside recent revelations. Could their alleged bond have created a system of unchecked power, one that trampled over artists like Whitney and others to maintain their stranglehold on the industry?
The question is he a criminal? You know, is he basically akin to a mob boss running several criminal enterprises? And while it's very clear to me he is a depraved, disgusting person, we have to prove that he violated the law.
Jaguar Wright, a former collaborator with The Roots and a vocal industry whistleblower, has made explosive claims about Davis's alleged role in Whitney and Bobby Christina's struggles. In a viral video, Wright accused Davis not only of introducing Whitney to a lifestyle she couldn't escape, but also of using his immense power to control her career and, chillingly, her demise. While these accusations remain unproven, they've reignited long-standing conspiracy theories about the darker corners of the music business. Is it possible that Whitney's tragic story, like Fantasia's and Cassie's, was another thread in the same sinister tapestry?
With no training in music,
none.
Did you think you'd be good at this?
I never thought I would have a musical ear. I never thought I'd have a natural.
And then there's Kim Porter, Diddy's ex-partner and the mother of 3 of his children, whose sudden passing in 2018 also raised eyebrows. Official reports attributed her demise to natural causes, but those close to her have hinted at a darker narrative. In the wake of Cassie's lawsuit and the federal raids on Diddy's properties, new theories have emerged suggesting that Kim may have known too much about the alleged inner workings of Diddy's empire. Could her demise be yet another piece in this horrifying puzzle? It's a question that looms large even as investigators remain tight-lipped about ongoing inquiries. What's clear is that the music industry, long celebrated for its glamour and glitz, is now under a microscope unlike anything we've seen before. The allegations against Diddy and Clive Davis are no longer isolated incidents. They're part of a broader pattern that implicates not just individuals, but the entire system. From the alleged intimidation tactics used to keep artists in line, to the unsettling rumors of blackmail and coercion, it's becoming increasingly difficult to dismiss these stories as mere gossip. There's a sense that the walls are closing in, not just on Diddy and Davis, but on an industry that has operated with impunity for far too long.
I'm sorry, I'm just I'm in this moment right now. This is crazy. Sorry. People don't really know how much what it does to you when something that you love is taken from you and thrown away like it don't even matter, and then they move on with their lives and you're stuck. You're stuck during those years. You're still stuck 21 years later.
As the trial against Diddy moves forward, the stakes couldn't be higher. Prosecutors armed with evidence from the Homeland Security raids are reportedly building a case that could rival the likes of Jeffrey Epstein in its scope and implications. And with Fantasia's and Cassie's testimony shining a light on the industry's darkest secrets, there's a growing call for accountability, not just for the alleged perpetrators, but for the system that enabled them. How many more stories like theirs are waiting to be told? How many other artists have suffered in silence, too afraid to speak out?
And what's really going to be interesting is the parade of celebrities who we expect to be mentioned and or called into that courtroom. You know, people who we hadn't heard about prior, like Mike Myers, you know, Austin Powers, Mike Myers. Why is he getting called? Why is he on the witness list? That'll be fascinating. And then, of course, there are the no-name, quote unquote, women who are going to have to find every ounce of courage they have.
The fall of Sean Diddy Combs, once considered untouchable, is a story for the ages. But it's also a cautionary tale, a reminder that power, when unchecked, can corrupt absolutely. As we wait for the next chapter in this unfolding saga, one thing is certain: the music industry will never be the same. The question now is, will this moment lead to real change? Or will it simply fade away, leaving the same toxic systems in? We want to hear from you. What do you think? Are these allegations the beginning of a long overdue reckoning, or just another scandal that will be swept under the rug? Let us know in the comments below. This is a story that's far from over, and we'll be here to uncover every twist, every revelation, and every shocking detail as it unfolds. Stay tuned.